Welcome back to Clear the Cash. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at an outraged Jew. And with me on the other side of the camera, if you guys are watching at home, is Jesse Bak. You can find him on Twitter at planet_fatness. Jesse, the card world continues to be set ablaze by these multi-million-dollar purchases. We talked about the Luka Doncic one last week. I think there were 3 or 4 multi-million-dollar purchases that took place this week. So things continue to get crazier and crazier in the card market as we've got digital cards and physical cards going on in tandem, while comic books, people are grading video games. Every hobby you can think of is literally on fire right now. And I know you, being the upper level premier card purchaser you are, is out there looking for deals all the time. Have you seen card prices rising significantly, amongst news of PSA grading going up and things like this?
So I believe it was this past weekend or the weekend before, Golden Auctions. I don't know if you guys have ever been on their website. I don't think any of us are ever going to be able to afford to go on there, but and buy anything on there. But they've had, this past weekend, they've had record-setting deals left and right. It was bananas. Like, I'm pretty sure Ken Golden made, like, I don't even know, like tens of millions of dollars from this weekend alone, just out of like the buyer's premium that the buyers have to pay. So it was crazy. There was a Luka, I think a green shimmer prism out of 5. I think it was a PSA 10 or BGS 9.5 or something. It sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, like $750K, something like that. Honestly, we're not even gonna bat an eye with $1 million+ card sales moving forward. It's gonna be so commonplace, and a lot of higher end cards, they, more often than not, they're in pretty sure hands, and they belong to a lot of people that don't really want to let go of them. But you're gonna see more of these cards pop up with this hot market period we're going through right now. So a lot of these cards are going to pop up either on Golden or PWCC or even eBay. So I don't think we're going to see these new all-time high $1 million+ sales slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, this is crazy. Between March 6th and 7th, the end of the winter auction 2021 at Golden Auctions, we saw a Kobe Bryant go for 1.7, a Mickey Mantle go for 1.3, a Roberto Clemente go for over $1 million, a LeBron James patch autograph one go for 1.5. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous times. And again, for the people that are, admittedly, most of us you're right, we're never going to wheel and deal in a golden auction. Now, there might be a fraction of our listeners that are more successful, fitter, better looking, more eloquent, be out in public more frequently than we are. They are probably prime candidates to eventually enter one of these auctions. But it's always impressive. But there are cards at all levels for everybody, and that's a big part of this show. It's trying to get anybody who's a listener of this audience, regardless of what your level of disposable income, from the people that have the littlest to spend to the guy that can actually go to a golden auction and spend money, there's a card out there for everybody. And with that being said, Jesse, I know everybody's trying to get into box breaks nowadays. There's lots of different people out there doing it. Sometimes it's hard to trust who is out there doing them. There's a couple people that I would recommend that do a great job. But we are going to start doing some box breaks over on Patreon. So for people that want to get into a Prism box break, we can do that. There's going to be some hangers, some megas. Mix it all up. Give people an opportunity at really good rates. So if you guys are interested, patreon.com/I'm outraged. You guys can check it out over there. There's more news to come on that forefront. Jesse, we know that PSA card prices have been raised. We talked about this on the last episode. Is PSA grading dead at the moment?
No. I think I've already given some of my thoughts on the last episode with whether or not I think this was a good decision by PSA. And I think for maybe the health of the hobby, it was. Um, I think they're going to take care of their backlog, and um, PSA slabs are going to be held at even a higher premium than they are right now, um, inevitably. So I think honestly they're helping themselves. I'm sure there are collectors out there that are pissed off in the short term, but I think we're going to see I think we're going to see that this is an overall positive event for the hobby. But no, I think even in the meantime, even with PSA, certain PSA grading packages doubling or going up a big percentage, I don't think that necessarily should deter you from submitting cards to PSA. But I have about 5 exceptions to the cards that you should be submitting compared to maybe the cards that you shouldn't be. So my first rule, or my first type of card that I would be still looking to submit to PSA, even with the price increases, is just a high end card in general, or any like expensive, rare, or scarce card. Its value raw has to already be pretty up there. But especially if it gets a 9 or above, it's going to increase precipitously in value. So those label like PSA labels make cards like that even more valuable. So that's the first type of card I would look to grade at PSA still. Second type of card, just it kind of overlaps with the first card, but just expensive raw cards in general. It doesn't. I'm sure there are cards out there that are raw, not super rare, like a Luca Prism PSA 10, and or a Luca Prism base raw could, you know, that might still be a card that you might want to grade with PSA, or just another player's base Prism, or just another more expensive card for a player. Um, Again, they'll be more valuable if they're in a PSA slab. The third exception is grading relevant cards of players who are all-time greats and whose value will only appreciate with time. So you can't think of these players' cards as cards you're looking to flip. So when I'm talking about players like this, it's going to be somebody like MJ or LeBron or Tom Brady, or think of like insert great all-time quarterback. So these are cards that of athletes that you're not like they're only going to appreciate with time. So you don't really need to be in a crazy rush to sell it as soon as you get it back in hand graded. The fourth type of card is a rookie card of an athlete who is still not quite a Hall of Fame player, a Hall of Fame worthy player, but they're not exactly a prospect either. So these like with these types of players, I'm thinking more like Giannis or Luca in the NBA, or obviously Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. So they're, I mean, you can really put a whole lot more players in this category here, but um, you have to be confident in their success long term, and that's going to be a type of player that you have to be comfortable still having ownership of their card, even though that card's going to be at PSA for some time, unless if you express submit it or something and it comes back within a couple weeks. But if you're comfortable owning this card for a year plus, that's a card that I would be looking to still submit at PSA. And my fifth exception is grading cards that you're comfortable holding or having ownership 12 plus months. These players might be a tier below Giannis or Luca, or maybe they're still relevant, but they don't get as quite the love as Giannis or Luca. Maybe somebody like, I don't know, like Kawhi Leonard, who's like stupid underappreciated in the hobby, by the way. Um, and they're cards that, again, a card that you're not looking to flip immediately, and maybe with another championship or potential MVP, um, that player's cards are going to continue to appreciate. So those are generally the types of cards that I would still be looking to submit to PSA, even if it's a base card of that player, as long as it's like, you know, a pretty relevant base card or a rookie base card. Those are the types of cards that I would generally still be looking to submit.
So, and Jesse, we have quite a few listeners. I'm sure that out there is a listener that doesn't fall under any of these exceptions, but still wants the PSA name. If they still want to grade with PSA, can they?
Absolutely. But this is a little trickier. So you have to do a little bit more research. If you don't fall into any of those 5 categories that I just mentioned, you're saying, Jesse, you know what? Go screw yourself. Like, I still want to submit to PSA. PSA is the godfather of grading right now. I still want my cards in a PSA slab. What should I do? How should I submit? So my first rule here would be that you need to make sure, and again, submitting cards for grading, you have to make sure that the corners are sharp, that left to right and top to bottom centering is pretty good or close to 50-50 as possible. The edges are consistent in color, and the surface looks really clean. It doesn't, like, you can use a magnifying glass and a LED light for all I care to make sure that the surface is clean. That's a big part, especially with PSA and BGS grading. So you have to make sure that even if you think the card is a 10, but if the card somehow gets a PSA 9, that you're still in the green. So you have to make sure that you spent, with the amount of money that you spent on the card itself, raw, the amount of money you spent on grading costs and insuring the card to get to PSA safely and back, with all of those costs in mind, you have to make sure that if the card comes back a PSA 9, you're still profiting as the second you get it back in hand. Like, imagine you send a card today, you get it back today, and it comes back a PSA 9, you're still in the green, you're still making money. So that's the first type of card that I'd be looking to submit, but you do have to do your research and find a raw card with all of those expenses in mind where you would still be profiting with a PSA 9. The second type of card I'd be looking to submit is, you would have to do, again, more research, look up on PSA's website. If you have a certain card in mind, make sure to look up plus gem rate. So the gem rate is that only has to do with PSA 10s, but it's the percentage of cards that were submitted to PSA of this particular card or player that were graded a 10 divided by the total number of cards graded by PSA of that card. So what reason that I use PSA mint plus gem rate, I'm looking at the 9 and 10 rate. So the 9 rate kind of goes back to the first point I made, but anything, I mean, this is kind of an arbitrary number, but in my mind, I'm thinking anything 70% or above a 9 plus 10 rate would be pretty ideal to submit to PSA. So if you think you can still profit while getting a PSA 9 of the card that you're looking to submit, that is still definitely worthy of grading with PSA.
I think you might have just had a Goodwill Hunting moment there for a second. I was lost at the point where we started doing long division. So one more time, what was your last process there?
So I like to look at, whenever I'm looking to submit a particular card, I like to have an idea of what the gem rate is in my mind. So the gem rate is the total PSA 10 population of that card divided by the total PSA population of that card. So the total PSA graded population.
So let me ask you one question about that. Now, are you using this because it helps you understand the average printed card and its quality for submission?
Essentially, yes. So if I see that the PSA 10 rate is relatively high, like well above, like if it's above 50% and it's a pretty valuable enough card, that's going to be a card that I'm going to be looking to submit. Now, the reason why I'm using say 9 plus PSA 10 rate, so mint plus gem rate, is you have to prepare yourself to potentially get a PSA 9. And if you can get a PSA 9 and still be making money if you bought the card raw, that's still worthy of grading. So if I see a PSA 9 plus PSA 10 rate, combine those rates, and you're seeing over 70% of this card that's being graded by PSA, if over 70% of those cards are getting a 9 or a 10, I'll be looking to submit that card.
Gotcha. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really smart way to do it. And obviously, I've never heard anybody lay it out in these terms, but I think that's a great way for people to kind of understand how many of this particular type of card have actually been printed of a 9 or 10 quality. So it makes a lot of sense for submitting to PSA. And for the people listening to this show that don't know much about grading and they're wondering, well, why would you send all these things to PSA? I mean, just generally speaking, Jesse, PSA, even though we both really like BGS, PSA is widely considered the premier grader in the industry, correct?
For sure. People love the 10. So, and people have been in love with the PSA slab since it came out in the 90s. It's always been incredibly relevant in the card grading world, but it's especially gotten a lot of love and fame over the last 5 to 10 years, basically surpassing BGS. And BGS was the king for decades in grading. So, yeah, I don't think the love for PSA is going to go away anytime soon, even with the grading submission increases, price increases.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so either. And we can see PSA is always putting out applications online. They're clearly trying to fill more spots for graders with the hobby growing like it is. But PSA is just one grading service, and it is admittedly the best grading service around currently, though we would agree that a company like BGS, to get a 10 from them, is probably more stringent of a grade than a PSA 10. So with BGS and SGC kind of coming back into relevance of grading, we know that there's going to be a massive uptick of submissions. So what do we do with companies like this?
So BGS and SGC, because of PSA's price increases and grading, they're kind of sneaking back into grading relevance. Their turnaround times, honestly, will probably be a problem with the general uptick in submissions to them. But honestly, in the short to intermediate term, they're going to see a huge bump, and people are going to start respecting those companies more than they are right now. BGS on BGS's slab, I don't know if you guys have seen or bought a BGS slab before. I honestly almost kind of prefer their label to PSA's, and reason being is on 90+% of BGS slabs, you're able to see kind of what's like a report card of their grading process. So the four components I mentioned earlier, when you're looking to submit a card for grading: centering, edges, corners, and surface, you're actually able to see those subgrades on a BGS slab. So it's almost like the overall grade of the card is card's GPA, and those subgrades are almost like grades that go into the GPA. So I kind of like seeing those subgrades as sort of like a peek into BGS's process of why they gave that card a 10 or a 9.5 or whatever, or if it got a black label 10. So that's honestly one thing that I prefer with BGS slabs. And in addition, like I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but BGS slabs are they are the most sturdy looking, heavy ass slabs I've ever seen. Like they are awesome. Like you pick up a PSA card and it feels like it weighs like 2 ounces, but a BGS card, it weighs like half like a good half pound. Like it's probably not that heavy.
I don't think it's that heavy.
It's so sturdy. Like it just makes the card feel so secure, and it like you're holding something of real value. But anyway, going back to the grading conversation with BGS, we've already seen BGS increase their prices since this hot card grading period started over a year ago. And their turnaround times honestly haven't been the best. They're probably around the same ballpark as PSA, so don't expect a quicker return, like a quicker time for the card to return and actually get in hand. Um, and also, this kind of makes me respect existing BGS slabs now, maybe not as much for someone who's looking to grade, but they're honestly the toughest grading company out there. Um, People have been saying that maybe in the last year, their grading has actually gotten tougher than it was before. So that's, I mean, as a person who's looking to submit cards, I think BGS will return to relevance. But um, I mean, honestly, more than anything, it makes me more appreciative of existing BGS slabs now. If something gets a BGS 10, that means that in my mind, that card is actually pristine.
Jesse, let me ask you this. You mentioned subgrades earlier, and I'm asking this question on behalf of the listeners. I do know this answer because you and I have talked about this. There have been cards where I have said, hey, man, this thing's a BGS 9.5. And you said to me, well, what are the subgrades? Can you possibly have two versions of a BGS 9.5 and one of them actually be less desirable because of the subgrades?
Definitely. So you have, if you're looking at a BG, especially BGS 9.5, so you can be looking at either a min gem 9.5, which means that the subgrades are graded just like the card is graded. It's on a scale of 1 to 10. So a BGS 9.5 min gem is 3 of the 4 grades are a 9.5 and one of the grades is a 9. So if you want to, if for whatever reason, if you want to cross that card over to PSA, your chances of getting a PSA 10 are probably not the highest. You have a pretty good shot at getting a PSA 9, but in PSA's mind, that card is closer to a 9 than it is a 10. But it's under BGS's label, it's still considered a gem mint card. Then you have the next level up, which is a true gem. So every subgrade on that BGS 9.5 is a 9.5. So that's the truest version of a 9.5 there is for BGS. Then you have the Gem Plus, which is one subgrade has a 10 and the remaining 3 subgrades have a 9.5. And this for a card like this, you actually have a decent shot. If you ever wanted to cross it over to PSA, you have a pretty good shot of getting a PSA 10. I believe I off the top of my head, I can't remember if 2 10s and 2 9.5s. I can't remember if that's a BGS 10 or a BGS 9.5. But regardless, that's a crazy card to get, and you should definitely be considering one if you see it.
I haven't seen that myself. I know that some of them that I've purchased are, a 10 and 3.95s. And I love the BGS 9.5s because I know that the grading company is so stringent. And, I do liken it to a PSA 10. There's just perception out there that the PSA 10 is the pinnacle of card grading when you and I believe that the Beckett 10 is at the absolute top because they give out the fewest 10s. But we've talked about PSA, we've talked about BGS. When we answered this question, we were also talking about SGC. Jesse, what can you tell me about SGC other than the fact that they have the least enticing slab I've ever seen in my entire life?
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So
No, no, no.
so it's I mean, it depends on the card. The SGC slab, if you guys haven't seen one, it's an all black slab. Their label is very like meh, but the slab itself is it's I mean it's interesting. It can make the cards pop. I don't like, I already like black and gold in my cards as it is, so I don't mind having a black slab once in a while. Um, but SGC has honestly lost a lot of steam and popularity in the hobby because when PSA and BGS were already announcing their backlogs back in the summer, SGC they just came in guns blazing and they're saying, listen, these chumps are keeping your cards for 6 months plus. Why don't you come grade with us? And SGC it's been a trusted company with more vintage cards, and I don't even think it's been grading modern cards up until the last 2 or 3 years. But um, back when they were talking crap on PSA and BGS, not even a month later, they had a crazy backlog themselves, and
Uh,
their staff couldn't even handle it. So I, right now they're basically doing the exact same thing. They're
well,
basically saying, listen, we've kind of cleared up our backlog, and why don't you submit with us? And this exact same thing is going to happen again.
Well, they're literally their website motto is get the service you deserve. No backlog, no bloated turnarounds, no games. They're going for the throat. PSA on their website literally acknowledges no one. They don't say anything. And this is what happens when SGC has been put in a corner. I agree. I think the slabs everybody's trying to do something unique, and we're gonna hit a couple more names here that have gone a little more flamboyant. BGS is a very clean look, like you said, sturdy slab. PSA, though they've changed their slab over time, it's an iconic look. The SGC slab, you guys can Google these, look them up. It's a very, the label, man. The label is just the label. Listen, when I was in school, when I was a kid, Jesse, it was all about the label. It was all about the Nike swoosh or the JanSport or the Adidas or whatever the hell it was. Janko, you don't know what that is, I'm sure. Maybe you do. Do you? Do you know what Janko is?
It's the bag company, right? It's like a JanSport, no?
Well, they made jeans. It's like J
Oh, okay,
apostrophe
okay.
NCO or
All
something
right.
like that. Jesse, not to date myself or say something overly embarrassing, but back in the day when I was in high school, and again, I'm not 40 yet, it was all about having pants that had the biggest bottom you could possibly get. And I don't mean like in the ass. I mean like you wanted your shoe to be engulfed by the bottom of the jeans. And it was the most absurd look. I remember my mom taking me to go pants shopping, and she's like, "Are you sure? Are you really? Now think about this. Are you really sure that you want these?" And I'm like, "There's 17-inch bottoms, Mom. Hell yes, I want these." And it was the look. And I don't even know how I went on this tangent, but these fucking SGC cards, man, are the biggest letdown since the Janko jeans of the mid 90s. But there's no backlog, you say.
There, as of right now, I mean, we'll see how we're looking in April, but um, I think with more people submitting to any non-PSA company, they're going to be looking at SGC too. So, I mean, SGC, they're not slouches either in terms of how hard they grade either. One can say that they're just about as tough as BGS is. So maybe SGC 10s and SGC 9.5s will be held at a little bit more of a premium moving forward.
That makes sense. You know what? We're live on a show, but I'm gonna go ahead and send you a picture of these pants, anyways. Because go ahead and enter the chat, please, Jesse, if you would. We'll wait.
All right.
And
Oh my God.
describe what you
These.
see.
All right. So this is as close as you can get to a jean dress for your lower half. Oh my
Oh
God.
my
Oh,
God! I wish you were there when I was buying these from Nordstrom's or whatever, and you would have made that comment. I would have never bought them.
just take a time machine back and
Oh,
don't waste your money.
oh God!
Yeah.
High
Hell
school
no.
wasn't friendly. Okay, so oh my God. Okay, so we've talked about BGS now and SGC, which by all accounts is the third most notable grader. But Does it not feel like maybe there's a little bit of fragility in their name when we look at perhaps the next two, which we're going to talk about, which are CSG and HGA?
Yes, I mean SGC. Honestly, they're probably going to come back into relevance, but they're definitely playing third fiddle out of the out of the three major grading companies. Like think of them kind of like Mosaic right now. And I mean Mosaic's it'll be relevant. Just people are going to be looking for Prism, Select, and Optic more. But speaking of CSG and HGA, the reason we wanted to talk about them is because I think these companies are going to get honestly the most amount of submissions out of any of the grading companies right now that are not named PSA. So first we'll talk about CSG. It stands for Certified Sports Guarantee. It's a new-ish grading company that's coming out of Canada. So especially for our Canadian listeners, if you're looking to submit, and you don't have to worry about getting your cards through customs, honestly just submit to CSG. Like they've gotten a more and more respectable name as the months have been going on. I honestly wouldn't really hesitate submitting to them. But if you look on CSG's website, they actually have like they go through their grading process pretty openly. It seems pretty transparent to me, honestly. They have like a 7-step grading process, and it seems like their customer service is probably going to be way better than you're going to find from the other three companies. They also use, interestingly enough, we keep occasionally we keep talking about AI as a grading tool and as maybe like a grading substitute, but they use AI as a tool to assist in grading. So it's not solely based. Their grade is not solely based on AI, but they use AI to maybe confirm or maybe challenge a grader's grade on a particular card. The turnaround times, from what I've been seeing, they seem pretty reasonable. Um, but the CSG slabs their prices will, I don't think they'll quite get to the prices of BGS and PSA, but they'll fall more in line or get closer to them with higher submissions that are about to come their way. And then we'll have, and then after CSG, we have HGA. HGA stands for Hybrid Grading Approach. They're by far the fastest rising grading company out there. They've burst onto the scene with basically what I believe is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's full AI grading. They may have a grader just to confirm the grade, but AI pretty much does a majority, if not all, of the grading. And their slabs, Nate, you mentioned in our previous episode that their slabs are color coordinated to the player's jersey. So you'll have an orange slab or an orange, an orange label on a Joe Burrow slab, or or a green label on a Jason Tatum slab. So that's honestly, I mean, take it or leave it. Some people don't really like it. They like a more classic, basic look, kind of like what PSA has. But other people think that makes a card pop, honestly. So honestly, that can go either way. But unfortunately, so the company wants to stay true to their grading turnaround times. So in order to stay true to those times, grading to them is pretty competitive at the moment, because right now they only grade a total of 2,400 cards a week. So that means that I don't know what day of the week it is. I'm guessing it's Monday of every week. You need to be on their website for whatever time of day that they open their grading portal, and you have to be your cards have to be in the top 2,400 or the first 2,400 in order to get graded for either that week or the next week. So grading with them is going to be pretty competitive. But honestly, if you're looking to submit a bunch of base cards of athletes that I'm talking about more cards that you're looking to flip, more graded cards that you're looking to flip, I'd probably honestly be looking at HGA and potentially CSG. CSG doesn't have quite the name as HGA does right now, so that's a little bit riskier. But I think both of them are still gonna grow in price and popularity.
I mean, I thought that SGC was throwing some haymakers till I read HGA's quote under changing the game in the About Us section. We believe that cards should receive grades. I should read this in like an accent. We believe cards should receive grades based not on who is on the card, the value of the card, or whether or not a grader is having a good or bad day. They're throwing shots. They say the card should be graded solely on the presentation of the card itself. So we are developing unique software that detects edges for crispiness, corners for sharpness, centering for balance, and surface for blemishes. We feel that we will grade your card accurately 100% of the time. That is bold, Jesse.
It is. They're kind of taking an SGC approach with throwing shade on PSA and BGS, especially. But honestly, like, can you, like, in all honesty, can you say that that's not true to an extent? Like, I'm sure there are graders that have had shitty days, and they don't give a card higher than a 9 for the day, or just like, or maybe something good happened in their lives and everything is they see is in rose-colored sunglasses, and they give a couple extra 10s that day. So
yeah,
grading is it's definitely it's one of the more subjective parts of the hobby, and it's kind of a shame that it is that way, just because this subjectivity can drive so many dollars a certain direction. It's kind of crazy. So I think in the long term there should be some sort of an AI technology built into grading these cards, and who knows, maybe PSA and BGS, maybe sooner than we think, maybe they'll either adopt this technology or buy those companies outright and own their technology as well.
that's the thing. That's the real killer, is that you would expect that if PSA was going to implement this technology, if they had some variant of it, that it would just crush HGA, that they would just then be right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like, just because HGA is bought out, it doesn't mean that HGA cards are going to be worthless in the future. I think they'll still have value, just because if PSA is buying their technology and buying the company, that means they did something right. So I don't think you have to be worried too much about buying HGA or submitting cards to HGA.
I mean, if PSA ever did buy them and they became like a sister company to them, it would be interesting. It would certainly give even more value to the name. But the idea that it is AI based is certainly something that I'm for it. I 100% am down with the automated process, especially if it's validated, because it's going to look at every card, objectively 100% of the time. And like you said, if somebody's having a bad day and they want to give that Fleer Jordan a PSA 7, even though it's probably a lot better than that, it can totally just derail the value of a card. So I think with a lot of things in this world, automation is faster, it's more efficient. It gives you an unbiased response. So I think that there's something unique to them, but at the same time, I feel like they're trying to shoot so many shots. So like, look, we got the coolest looking slabs, and we're using computers, and fuck PSA. Like they're trying, like they're really trying to do everything that's left, everything available, to try to win over the masses. So I do like him, admittedly. I don't know. I have not graded with SGC personally. And again, the visuals of them have never really done it for me. I realize that they've got more of a track record than HGA. But if it was between the two, I might actually decide to go with the one that's got the better looking slab, that's got, computer, autonomous grading. I might actually go that way versus SGC. I just, I don't find myself buying SGC slabs either, and I know that you probably have a couple, but if it's between a BGS and an SGC, you're buying BGS, right?
Yeah, I'm going BG. Speaking of BGS, it almost seems like every single fucking card I'm buying on eBay is a BGS slab, just because of how damn cheap they are right now. It's crazy. But yeah, I would definitely go BGS over SGC 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. So we'll see the development of these companies as we go, but with the popularity of people buying packs, buying raw cards, everybody's trying to get everything graded. So it takes more companies, but at the same time, I think people don't know that you can really tank the resale value of a card by submitting it to one of these sort of one-off graders. I mean, if you submit a card to CSG and you get a CSG 8 back, I mean that card's dead, right?
Yeah, you definitely look over your cards. Like the one when I'm talking about going through the grading process yourself and trying to guesstimate, while you're preparing a card for grading, try to guesstimate the grade of the card yourself just before you submit it and see whether or not it's actually worth submitting. It's one thing if it's a card for PC and you just want it protected for its lifetime, whatever, that's fine. But yeah, just go through the cards. Like, just make sure that the card has a very good chance of getting a 10, and if not, it has a really good chance of getting a 9. So yeah, you just honestly go through the cards yourself. It takes time. Especially if you have like 100 cards or something, it's gonna take a couple hours. So if you're down to if you're game to put the time in, that's you honestly have to make money here.
So what about the people that don't want to get their cards graded? They don't want to send it to one of these 5 companies, but they still want to make money on raw cards. What do they do?
Honestly, this out of PSA's price increases, this is the most interesting part. Like this is I think raw card selling is going to change for the better, and I think people are going to start respecting raw cards more. So there are going to be people that honestly they're PSA diehards, but with the price increases now, they don't really want to submit to any grading company whatsoever. So we're going to see more and more raw cards being sold on eBay. So I've bought plenty of raw cards on eBay myself. Nate, I'm sure you have too. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have. That's honestly that's honestly a pretty decent way to go if you're looking to either buy or sell. Just be aware with eBay if you're looking to sell raw cards on there. If you're selling something super not short printed like a base prism or something, um, just be careful and make sure you're selling to a buyer who has a pretty good eBay rating, like basically 100% positive feedback rating, so that you don't have to worry about a potential return within a 30-day period. And who knows, like they could honestly even send you another copy of that card back that's way shittier condition compared to yours. So you definitely you have to be smart selling raw cards on eBay. But if if you don't want to go the eBay route, and if you want to maybe go a little bit more of a secure route, you can honestly use Star Stock. And it's a shame we don't talk about Star Stock enough on this show. I'm sure plenty of our listeners are at least aware that the company exists, or maybe even have an account themselves. Speaking of which, if you guys are looking to sign up on Star Stock, you can actually use my username on there. My username is JBAK93. You can use that as a promo code when you sign up and make at least a $10 deposit. When you sign up and make a $10 deposit, you get 10 more dollars and I get $10. So, and I mean, my username isn't anything special. You could honestly do this with your friends who already have Star Stock accounts, but I think it's just such an awesome promotion of Star Stock, basically just giving away free money to all of its users. So before you submit cards to Star Stock, especially raw cards, again, submit them as if you're submitting them to a grading company and trying to evaluate your collection and seeing what's actually what's worth submitting, or what might have a chance of either gemming or at least getting a mint grade. So we've talked about on a previous episode that the Star Stock A holds a very high premium in the raw card world. So StarStock basically they do their own grading process of looking at raw cards by hand and deeming them either an A, B, or a C. And an A has a pretty good chance of either getting a 9 or 10 if submitted to PSA. A B probably is around an 8, and then a C is anything below, like a 7 or below. A C has to have like a glaring issue with it. So try to go through your collection and see what actually has a chance of getting a StarStock A. Because if your card has a chance of getting a StarStock A, you can submit it to StarStock, wait however long it takes for them to upload it onto your account on the website. It might take like a month or something. You might have to be a little bit patient here. But that StarStock A, as soon as you want to list it and flip it raw, that A will for sure go for more money than that same raw card on eBay, because there's actually a third party, a neutral third party that's going through this card for free for you to basically tell the buyer and the seller the condition of the card as it is raw right now. And another nice part about StarStock is that there are no holding or inventory fees, which is amazing. So you can submit 1,000 cards to StarStock, and they're not going to charge you a monthly amount to keep that 1,000 cards in their inventory, in their warehouse or whatever. That's insane. So that's pretty rare when you're able to do that. You could do that for graded cards too with other platforms, and they'll still charge you I don't know, a certain percentage a month, or a certain cost a month. So it's really nice of StarStock to just kind of hold on to your stuff for free without you having to worry about paying to keep your stuff there. And also, when you transact on StarStock, whether buying or selling, StarStock only takes 5% commission for every transaction on there, compared to eBay, which takes around 13% for every transaction. So it's honestly kind of a no-brainer to at least consider submitting your raw cards to StarStock. I mean, a couple disclaimers. So they do have to be um, they have to be modern, relevant cards, and they mostly transact, or they mostly buy and sell like the major brands today. So Prism, Mosaic, Optic, Select. So it has to be relatively modern. Um, and yeah, unfortunately, you won't be able to submit holder cards there. But like honestly, just with the premium that StarStock A's and even some StarStock B's, the premium that they have over eBay raw cards, it's honestly a no-brainer to submit to them. And another company we have, as it's kind of a forgotten child, but they still have a sizable enough consumer base to the point where I've actually transacted on there recently, both buying and selling, is COMC. So it's COMC. It stands for Check Out My Cards. Um, this is more of a site that's pretty friendly to cards that are more like PC cards. They're not quite investor cards. Like we think of Prism, Select, Optic, and Mosaic as almost like investor or flip sets. But they're not selective in terms of what you can submit. So you can submit basically any raw card you want to them, and they'll take it no problem. If you're looking to submit to StarStock, but you go through your inventory and you see that, okay, this card probably doesn't have a chance of getting a StarStock A, I would consider sending that card to COMC, because COMC, I don't think they necessarily have to disclose the condition of the card, but honestly, people will probably want to purchase raw cards if they don't have any intention of flipping them on COMC as opposed to eBay. So I still think you're going to have a pretty decent size audience and maybe and foot traffic, I guess, on the website. unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, StarStock doesn't have a holding or monthly inventory fee. Unfortunately, ComC does. It's a small fee. It doesn't cost very much. I'm pretty sure I pay one every month, and I hardly see a difference in my ComC account.
He doesn't even know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too much. And I'm pretty sure I have like a good amount of cards there. I probably have like 60 cards in ComC. And I don't pay too much for the monthly holding fee, but that's just kind of a small downside compared to StarStock. But if there's a card that you don't think that's raw, that's in your possession, and it probably won't get a StarStock A, it's not a bad idea to submit it to ComC.
So whether people are looking to get cards graded or they want to deal with raw cards, Jesse, you have laid out perfectly the way, the A to Z, step-by-step process for people to take advantage of all these different things. Again, if you guys go to StarStock, use Jesse's name on there, JBAK93. Help him out. Help yourself out. Let's help Tony Thomas out. He's a patron. He had a question. We're going to wrap this show up with one last question because I know you and I both have something we want to say about this. Tony says, I feel like Lamar Jackson is undervalued right now. That's true. He's a year removed from an MVP season, is probably about to get an elite wide receiver in free agency, and a massive contract is anywhere from days to a year away. What cards of his should I be looking to buy?
Tony, you are a smart man. We honestly, we probably haven't been talking about Lamar Jackson enough on any of these shows. I think he is a fantastic buy, and I'll tell you why. So there were two cards of his. As soon as we got this question in today, I wanted to see. I knew he was a buy, but I wanted to see exactly how much of a buy he truly is. So I looked up Lamar Jackson's Prism Base PSA 10 rookie card and his Select Field Silver PSA 10 rookie card. So to go into the Prism Base first, this card between July 17th and September 28th of 2020, every single purchase or transaction on eBay went for above $2,000 on this card. The card peaked on eBay on August 9th for $3,759. The last sale, it's insane. The last sale went for $900 on March 7th, and that's a 76% drop.
It's
just to let that sink in.
I mean, it's so far down. And, when you talk about the actual date at which this Lamar Jackson, base Prism, which, by the way, there's about 540 in population.
That's still low. I consider that low.
That is low. I mean, for sure, that's definitely low. And this is a card that went for roughly $3,600, and it just went for less than $1,000. So that card, without a doubt, is the card to get your hands on. And the point that I wanted to make is when it hit its peak, there wasn't even football being played yet. This was a COVID offseason, preseason, and this card was pushing $4,000. A base Prism was pushing $4,000. I mean, that's mind-bending. So it's not surprising to us in the least if in the future here, as we return to the same August period of time, for this card to reach $2,000 again. I mean, I think that's absolutely in its range of outcomes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this card is going to reach 2,000 by. I can't see it not reaching $2,000 by July.
Yeah, things have just gotten too quiet. In the event that they add some stud free agent, whoever ends up signing here, if somebody great signs here and there's a little buzz that builds, then we get a little bit of that off-season hype building. 2,000 feels like the floor. I mean, again, like you said, nothing sold for less than 2,000 over the period of multiple months when football wasn't being played. Then the season opened up and we saw that card drop a little bit, but it was still $1,500, $1,800 over where it's at right now.
Nate, it was every single transaction between July 17th and September 28th. I know the pop is relatively low, but it was commonly transacted. Like this car was very commonly frequently bought and sold between those 2 months. So I don't have a number off the top of my head of how many times it actually was sold, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was at least 50. And in every single one of those transactions, that went for over $2,000.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we're not working with like a small sample size here.
No, that was definitely that's when the floor was solidified for him. So we'll get back there. But tell me this, Jesse, you and I talked, we found another card, Lamar Jackson. By the time this episode airs, this card will no longer be available. But ask Jesse and I if we did buy it. We've agreed to go in 50-50 on this thing. We want to win this card. Tell me about the so this is a 2018 Donruss Optic Lamar Jackson downtown PSA 10. These downtowns, why do they look so amazing?
It has you guys have to look up exactly how this card looks, but it looks freaking sweet. Like this is probably one of the best inserts I think Optic has ever had in any sport. It basically has the just like random features of what Baltimore is all about. It has Edgar Allan Poe in the card too. It's just like it's such a cool looking card. I know there are 90s basketball cards that were basically designed kind of similar to this, and they go for a ton of money, and they were so sought after in the 90s basketball card market, which is still hot today. And this card, it's super short printed. My buddy actually pulled one, not of Lamar Jackson, but in a 2020 box, a retail box, and you have to rip like at least hundreds of packs to be able to find this insert. It's crazy. I don't know the exact pop count. I'd have to look it up for this Lamar downtown PSA 10. It's probably low. It's honestly probably like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a tenth of his base Prism PSA 10 that has been selling for basically, like, it was commonly selling for over $2,000. So it's very short printed. It's probably honestly the insert to go after if you're looking at Optic in general.
Yeah, it is without a doubt one of the nicest cards I've ever seen. I mean, it's such a, I don't even know what to say. I'm like drawn to this card. We have to win this card. We have to. We've set a collective goal between the two of us. Currently, the card is roughly halfway there now. There's a day and 20 hours left on it. I think it's going to exceed what we're willing to spend. But Jesse, I think we've put ourselves in a good position. I think we'll be battling to the end on this card. There's just no doubt in my mind on this. So, Jesse, once again, you've delivered like nobody in the industry can. If you guys have questions, feel free, hit us up on Twitter. We're always available to answer questions. If you want to get into a box break, come join us on Patreon. If you're going on Star Stock, hit Jesse up. Thank you guys very much, and we will be back next week with another episode.